Hola community, welcome to Blender.Today live streaming from the Blender HQ here in Amsterdam. We are gathered today to see what's new in Blender. There's a bunch of new things here and there, cycles, some baking, as you can see by the name of this episode, then some video sequencers, some painting stuff. Not a whole lot. There is some updates on some add-ons, so I think we're gonna keep it nice and short today. Well, not short. It should take as long as at least 1 hour. We're gonna do questions as well. So for the Q&A, please go to Blender.Today, leave your question, and I'm gonna try my best to answer them. I got some announcements for today, though, that are involve the Blender community at large and Blender itself. So we are back to the 80s. Back to the 80s. Why? Because 2.83 that came out nearly 2 years ago is the first LTS. If the first long-term support, it means that it would get updates for 2 years. It was not a prototype, but like a proof of concept, and it worked out actually. The last update was last week on Thursday. The update was the 2.83.20 came out, just fixing 5 issues since the previous release, which also had like not so many, because at some point there's just no more fixes to do. But it's important to outline that this experiment of having LTSs, it actually turned out pretty well. People are using it. Is anybody here using 2.83? If you are using 2.83, it's crucial to all the folks that are still on Windows 7. 2.93 is not on Windows, but you can make Blender run on Windows 7 if you do get the right Blender Stack Exchange post. Although Windows 7 is no longer supported, not even by Microsoft, so you should probably consider upgrading. Anyway, if you are using 2.83 LTS, remember that it's the window for 2 years. It's nearly coming to an end. That would be, I think it was June, at the beginning of June. So it's coming to an end, which means that you're not going to get more bug fixes. Although if you've been using 2.83 all this time, you're probably not going to run into any more bug fixes. Like the list of fixes for this release was just insane. Just not so many for the previous one, but then boom, 2.19. This one had a lot of fixes. 18. Bunch more, 17 bunch, 16, 15, only one, but a very important one I guess. Anyway, so many fixes. I think it's the most stable Blender ever. So if you are using it and you need to move on for whatever reason, there is 2.93 that it's still available for another year. So I think this one also came out in June. And yes, June 2021 is going to get fixes until June 2023. So that will be a good, step forward. If you need even further, this year there will be another LTS release. I'm having mate again, like in the good old days. Remember, today is not summer anymore, spring anymore. It's super cold, so it's good for my my voice, my puber voice. Anything else that I had to cover this week? We have a new mirror. If during the weekend you downloaded Blender from the United States or anywhere in the Americas, you may have noticed different speed, and hopefully it was a bit faster. So the Open Computing Facility at the University of California in Berkeley has provided a new mirror, and we were testing it this weekend because Clarkson University mirror was down for maintenance. They expanded it, made it much nicer, so it was a good moment to try it, and I think people have been posting even faster speeds than in the past. So if you notice anything different, great. Well, if you didn't notice, great. If you notice, for the good, for the better, then that's awesome. More, and there is another mirror that wrote today from Singapore. We still haven't figured all the logistics for that yet, but there might be a new one coming in. So yay for that. All right, let's continue. if you use 2.83 and encounter a bug, make sure to leave a good bug report. For 2.83, well, I mean, there's really nearly not that many more months left, actually. So let's get started. What other news? Elon Musk is about to buy Twitter, apparently. Hope doesn't change. Otherwise, we all go to Mastodon. For the time being, let's continue hanging out here. And let's get started with some news. The news of the day. Let's talk about the topic of this episode, which is baking. There is now, well, you can now bake UDIM from regular Blender. So it used to it just didn't work. Basically, there was a bug report by Daniel Bysted from January that yeah, this is what you would expect, is to have each tile, each object, each getting one tile each, but that wasn't the case. So that has been fixed, and it seems to work for cycles and for multi-res baking as well. Triangles that are baked to multiple UDIM images if they span across them, although it's not really recommended workflow. The way you work with UDIMs, usually you should try to keep everything enclosed in one tile and not having things crossing from one tile to the other, because there is no interpolation apparently between the tiles, so it's just not gonna be great. So keep everything in one tile. Then okay, let's talk, since we're talking about cycles and a bit of hardware, let's mention, raise your hand if you use AMD on Linux. Yes, cycles. The AMD RDNA GPUs have been enabled to use the HIP framework, backend for using cycles HIP on Linux. This was a long-standing since 3.0 is that Blender cycle supports HIP for rendering, and now, but it was only limited to Windows. Mac has Metal, and Linux was left now no longer. Although it needs a new driver, you need to update it to 22.10 ROC M5.1 driver. Not familiar with the naming conventions, but it's good to see that the HIP device thing is getting up, it's getting in there. CentOS workers. What else? Hardware ray tracing. This list is halfway built in, but there's also some things that get me too excited. HIP check. I use Linux with AMD. Hey, there is the one person we found in the chat. Okay. I'm a Dambi. What's UDIM? Look it up. It's an industry standard way of laying your UVs. Has to do with UVs, with texturing, and it's an industry standard. The next update is related also to cycles and to the caustics. Remember we introduced that? I mentioned this a few weeks ago when it was introduced. There were some limitations. One, the mesh had to be smooth shaded, and also it had to have UVs. Well, this requirement for UVs is no longer valid. Actually, you can have caustics on objects without UVs. So there was some limitation on that. There is some extra changes, like add support for multi-scatter GGX refraction. So you should check again all the links of everything that I'm going through. It's in the description of this video, so you just go to the description, scroll, and you can skip the entire live stream if you want, because I'm just literally going through these commits that I prepared earlier today and during the week. The next update is related to mixed space. What is that? What is that? Well, has to do with the speed. This particular commit, if you look at the bug report, it has to do with the time that cycle starts takes to start. So for example, the user Go Blender submitted this bug report on Saturday last week, the previous week, and with Comic Sans, they made this video where it shows how Blender cycles will start fast by default, but then the moment you add a normal map node, then it would just take longer. So if you notice these kind of things, you should always report it as a bug. Don't expect things to be noticed immediately, because sometimes it might take longer. So just whenever you're in doubt, please report, because the issue here is that it gets slower even though the node is not even plugged into anything. It just exists there, and the cycles takes longer. So that's another reminder, always, just as a prevention, always remove all the nodes that you're not using it. It's a good practice. Okay, I mean, this shouldn't happen anyway, but it might happen, it can happen, and it happens. So it's good to keep your node setups tidy. The next section is geometry nodes. There are a few changes in the way, well, by the way, this week, so either today, tomorrow, this week, Blender is moving to Beacon 3, which means Blender 3.2 becomes beta and Blender 3.3 alpha begins. So crazy. So if you see any video this week about the Blender 3.3 alpha, it's not gonna have anything new. It's just gonna start the process. But the cool thing is that 3.2 becomes beta, so there will be a new splash image, and the process begins to make it more stable. Then we have to work on making the website, and it should be launched, if I remember correctly, this should be June 8, so a bit later, but yeah, this is the June release. So far, at least all the releases like 283, 293 were in June, so this one it's also June, so June 8 ish, right before Annecy. Did you know that the Blender Studio is going to Annecy, by the way, the Annecy Animation Festival in Annecy in France? So if you're gonna be there, show up, say hi. Okay, so nodes. Yes, there is a concept of the named attributes. Remember, in 2.93, geometry nodes was very young. So geometry nodes appeared in Blender 2.92. In 2.93, it got many more features. It was the attribute workflow was expanded, and it was still using the concept of named attributes, where you will have to give a name to everything. Actually, it didn't have anything else but named attributes. If you wanted the position, you had to type position, and that's how it worked. It's super flexible because you have access to everything. You can type anything. Yeah, it's very flexible. You name something in one way, you share it to someone else, and as long as they have the same name, it's very, very flexible for sharing. If you want to put your shaders in Gumroad, for example, or like some other website and share it, and it's very powerful. However, in Blender 3.0, with the introduction of fields to geometry nodes, things, the name attributes disappear for a much more powerful system like fields. However, the concept of named attributes is still valid if you want to go super advanced and have all the flexibility in the world, especially if you want to share it and make things more readable. You now also have access to named attributes. At the time of making this video, the name attributes are still experimental. So if you go to the preferences, if you have developer extras enabled, experimental section, named attribute nodes, you still have to enable this, and that would actually let you add specific nodes that are related to that. So you can, for example, store a named add new attribute. So you can say like my attributes, great name. there is a panel in the modifier that, well, I think this is going to change name soon. This is named used attributes now, but it's going to be named because this is not very descriptive. It is a list of your used attributes, but it's only showing named attributes, and also anything that you modify that is related to attributes, except built-in, because you can't, like if there's another node, for example, that you can remove an attribute, a named attribute. So if I try to remove, for example, position, well, first let's connect this so I actually get a list. So if I try to remove material index or position, I can't remove those because they are built in. So yeah, this actually, if you download the buildbot, the buildbot from like now, that buildbot is from last night, which means they still didn't get, it doesn't look like this. It's actually it has a bug where it shows the name of the attribute that you want to delete, even though it's a built-in. Now this is much more yeah, it's easier to read. Actually, this icon is no longer an info icon, it's a warning, because things are not working as expected, because you can't delete a built-in attribute. This morning, this used to say cannot delete attribute with the name, but it didn't say why. Now at least you know that built-in attributes, that is because it's an built-in attribute. Then no, that's it. This is how you make. There is a few more notes related to this, but store, remove, everything is here. There will be some changes in terms of, for example, the named attributes overlay. This one, for example, if I make a group, and well, no, this one wouldn't work. But if I make a group, there you go. There is this new overlay up here that says attributes. And actually I didn't, maybe I need to compile again. Let's see if I can do it live. Yes, yeah. Whoa, no, there was a huge library update boost. Okay, maybe it's not gonna go so fast. I was like, hey, maybe gee. I swear I compiled like there. This is what I wanted. I actually wanted just this change in the node draw. There was a change related to this, to the named attributes, where now this actually shows you the name. Instead of just saying attributes, it says 5 named attributes. It's gonna tell you actually the number of attributes that have changed, and it's gonna say named attributes because that's what it shows usually. That's the only thing it shows basically. On mouse over, you're gonna get a bit more information. This is important because it could happen that you may use the same name in 2 different node groups and the results are gonna vary. So it's important that you keep an eye on what you're changing. So let's see how this breaks. This is gonna compile fine. Seems to be fine. I'm happy. At home I managed to run Linux again. Turns out my the windowing system was being forced to Wayland, and I have an NVIDIA graphics card and they don't like each other. You have to force use Xorg. While this compiles, let's go into another entry related to geometry nodes. This is better support for byte color. Yeah, so there is, whenever you make a new attribute, you're gonna get prompt with what kind of color attribute you want. So you can create an attribute, so my color attribute, with a domain, vertex or face corner, and then you can give it a type, which is color or byte color. So basically this just gives you different levels of depth. So a color is like a float color and byte color is like the 0255. So if you want precision, use more memory, but yeah, color, vertex color. What would be a better name for that? Because byte is a bit, I mean, once you understand, once you know what it is, it's fine. But as a beginner, I don't know if you care so much. Maybe you should just say the depth. Is there such a thing? Like when you say PNG 8, 16? Okay. In the meantime, this is still compiling. Oh, it's building the kernels. I didn't disable it. You can disable that, by the way, so it compiles faster. What Linux distro does Simon Thomas use? Ask Simon. No, I mean, I don't know what distro he uses at home, but at work we all use, most of us use Pop OS. That is based on Ubuntu. So yeah, Pop OS. Most of us. Some people have their own, or they use like KDE on top of Pop OS, but yeah. Usually, I think at some point we all switch to Pop OS. Is the color attribute feature really geared towards beginners? No. It's not not related to a like a level, an experience level. It's color attributes is just basically an easier way. So for example, here you have color attributes. This is the same as adding it to here in the attributes. However, you get more options up here because you can set which one is the fallback vertex color, and also if you are painting, like if you're in vertex paint, or actually in the sculpt paint mode in paint, you can choose in the canvas, you can choose which color attribute you want to change, and you see it becomes active. Whereas attributes, you can have any kind of attribute. You can have like a vector, you can have a face boolean, for example, like a what would I, like the shade is shade smooth, for example. So if I do here boolean, see I have all these attributes which are independent of the one that is active for painting. So that's the main difference there. Okay. I was trying to paint. There you go. Now I can paint. Okay, next. Oh, by the way, I just compiled, so this should yay, now there you go. Now it says want named attribute, and if you mouse over, it says accessed named attributes, and the panel that probably hasn't changed yet. No, hasn't, but it will change. The name of this panel will change today, tomorrow, because we still have some time until the beta. Once Blender enters beta stage, there is no more changing the UI, because that's when people are encouraged to write documentation and make tutorials and all that jazz. Okay, let's see what else. Well, there is a few, like, I think we can, this entire episode is a potpourri section, but we have some video sequence editor tweaks and improvements, like okay what, that's the name of the user, has contributed a little patch that brings me some Mandela how do you call it, effect, when you think that something existed and you could swear that it existed. Well, the frame selected operator, I thought it existed, but for the preview mode, but it didn't. It was for the strips only in the video sequence editor, not in the preview. So now when you are in the preview itself, you can use the pie menu or the shortcut that you're used to, the dot numpad in the numpad. So if you have a strip, you can select those and then frame selected. Yay, super simple. So thanks. Okay, what? What else? The next improvement, it's a fix. Actually, it's a bug fix about updating the first thumbnail when you're moving the handle of a strip. So I thought it would be nice to mention, because that's something at least I ran into a lot, and it's good to see it fixed. Then we have some painting updates. So first, in the canvas panel, the one I just showed you, now there is a plus and minus button. They weren't there last week, and this was contributed by Jung. Yay, Yun, QC. So thank you, QC. Speaking of painting, or more vertex painting, the vertex paint has been, I open the right one, yes, has been revamped to C++. What does it mean? Well, it should mean nice, more future proof. There is also a new API for mixing colors. And now the vertex paint uses the sculpt and do system. So yay for that. And it now works with both bite and float colors, and point or vertex and corner or face corner attributes as well. Speaking of sculpting or painting, the curve, when you're using the new curves and using the sculpt in those curves, now there will be the tool settings are now going to be shown there. And I think even the settings were scene level and now they're individual brush level, so yay for that. Brush settings for sculpting hair. What else? Again, these potpourri sections, there's a bunch of everything. Color management, ACS or ACES. I am so afraid to just say like ases, like the because in Spanish will be ases, ases. So it's like the plural of bum. So yeah, ACES, CG. There is a new configuration for this, so it makes it easier to write and read ACS, CG, EXR files. Just go to the settings, just go to the commit if you want to get the details. Okay. What else? I'm following the chat. Any plugin that you recommend to ease out the process of retopology? Well, just wait, because Blender is getting a new retopology. The retopology mode in Blender. So just hold on tight and there will be a new mode coming. So yeah, it's being worked on, retopology in Blender. What else? How to disable compiling kernels through CMake? Yes, through if you do CMake, you can, I'm in the wrong folder. You can basically just tell it which ones to compile. And for example, if you want to compile in CUDA, you can tell it in, like, for example, I don't need all of these binaries. I have the 75 or the 86. Anyway, these are for older graphics cards, for example. I don't need that. You can make it compile in the on demand or before, or you can just basically make light and it's gonna skip all of that. Not even gonna make cycles, it's just gonna be the fastest one. Does it also finally get a decent internal auto retopo tool? Well, there is a retopo mode. The auto retopo, it's not really a retopo mode, right? It's just the automatic. It should just work. Okay, we have not so much more. So let's talk a little bit about Python and add-ons. Let's first go through Python. There's a new temporary context override support. So you now can override temporarily the context of a Python operator, which makes it so much easier. Instead of you having to make a whole context, build your own context every time you want to run an operator, now makes it much more easy. So that, and this is just for the text editor, that now the soft keywords are added to the built-in function list. So now they get properly highlighted. This is related to Python 3.10, which uses match case, for example. Now this is properly highlighted. What else? Speaking of building Blender, many libraries having upgraded. So there is new libraries even, PyString, RobinMap, WebP, FMT, level 0. But also many others having upgraded. FFmpeg 5, Boost, everything, JPEG. JPEG. What are they still doing to JPEG? It's crazy. OpenColor.io, well, that's OpenEXR, OpenImage.io, OpenSubdiv. So yeah, bunch of libraries having upgraded. That's it. No, let's talk a little bit about add-ons. So let's do the proper add-ons. Okay, so in the add-ons category, there is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 changes. Number 1, Magic UV. This add-on is a must, and it got a pretty large upgrade actually. If you see, almost all the files have been changed, although some of them is just a string. But the new features include copy paste UV island. Now you can copy paste a UV island. The pack UV option now has accurate island copy, so it uses the topology, if I am correct. Stride, that allows you to give an stride and spacing basically, and apply pack UVs. There is also some other updates, but super welcome, especially before 3.2. So Magic UV. The other add-on that got some updates is Rigify. So the Rigify update, it's mainly a public service announcement that if you notice anything weird with the numbers, if you're using the IDs and it was confusing because the IDs will start in 1 instead of 0, Blender's internal layers for rigging start from 0. And the Rigify will start from 1. So every time you have to do some math, or you have to think twice, because yeah, it's not 15, it's 14. Anyway, no longer the case. And yeah, the icons, it was the UI was terrible. Well, it's still a bit terrible though, because it's not using capital letters. It is using here in add from theme, which it shouldn't, because from shouldn't have capital, but it doesn't have it here. Unify select active colors. Anyway, and also apply has a refresh icon, and unify, this is a toggle or not. Unified, this is so confusing. You can't. Okay, that's also partially Blender's fault that the UI doesn't tell you, because this is a toggle that it looks like it could look like an operator being pressed, or like a toggle on. And it has a lock icon, and it says unify select active colors, and then it has a what I think is an operator, because it says apply. So very interesting to see how add-ons, you know, they have their own language, and I think it's not their fault, it's Blender's interface guidelines that should be more fleshed out and should be give more guidance for users to make nice add-ons and consistent add-ons as well. Then the other, this one is fun, because last week during the Q&A there was a bug report, well, a feature request that was actually a bug report. It was a feature request, but I mentioned, hey, actually that sounds like a bug, you should report it. And it was reported, and and it was a bug, which now got fixed. It was about the Snap Utilities line add-on that now allows you to rotate the navigate and rotate the view while using it. So yeah, it was a bug. So when in doubt, just report the bug. The next change is in the Node Wrangler. Node Wrangler now lists all the attributes that you can have. No longer the vertex. When you have the Node Wrangler add-on and you are in shading, for example, you shift A and you could choose in the past the list of vertex colors. Vertex colors got renamed to color attributes, and now it lists all types of attributes, not only vertex colors. So yay, much more welcome. Okay, let's see the no, that's it. that's it. Actually, and the glTF exporter also had like 6 version updates. Some are smaller changes, some are bigger, but just to let you know there has been updates in that add-on. And last but not least, the shoutouts. Let's give a few shoutouts. So the animation module has been pretty active, and not only in terms of code, but also having meetings and sharing about them on social media. I saw on Twitter a few posts. Actually, I learned about this through Twitter first, that this developer Colin Basnet is contributing by fixing things here and there, and it's so refreshing to see new people jumping in. Yes, last week I mentioned that we needed tooltips for some nodes in geometry nodes and shading and stuff, and someone like immediately just started looking into it and jump into Blender chat and compile Blender, and is gonna work on it. So cool. So yeah, this is mainly a cosmetic change, that the strip would the action wouldn't fit, like the name wouldn't fit in the action size. So now it does. Actually, it scales properly. It doesn't have the 3 dots like the ellipses, but okay, one thing at a time. At least it shows. But it would be nice if it would show the ellipses, because that way you know, just like the rest of Blender, sometimes, not all the time, but yeah, you see at some point it shows the ellipses, but not everywhere. You see, for example, output attributes, here it doesn't do it, but here it does. So it's not very consistent, but I think it's important that it does. Sometimes it doesn't even fit, so WR doesn't, but then W alone, yes. Yeah, it's super hard, I bet, to get this right because of all the different types of zoom levels and stuff. But anyway, it's fantastic to see this, so thank you, Colin, for working on this. And also related to animation updates, Ramil Rosilet has been contributing on so many little patches here and there. This one, for example, the grid, when you are remeshing, now shows properly the which unit is using. So if you have it set to, I don't know, meters, for example, now when you want to adjust that grid, it's gonna show you meters, kilometers, anything. And also if you have adaptive mode, it's gonna adapt, so it will start with millimeters and then go all the way to whatever, centimeters, meters, kilometers. This is great for our fellow Americans, imperial users, imperial units, to learn. It's like, oh, I reached 10 centimeters, I reach 100 centimeters, and then it's no longer. Why not 100 centimeters? Because it's 1 meter. And yes, I don't wonder how far does it go though. Next, also by the same user, by Ramil, he been updating icons even. You see, you can help in everywhere in Blender. You can, one day you can fix the units of microns even. And sometimes you are fixing icons because the color was wrong. It was a bit too bright, and now this is the actual color. Well, it's not that it was too bright, it was just that it was different from the rest of the colors, so it's good that it's unified. Brightness aside. The other one by Brad Clark added the bake option back to the NLA. So you see, everybody's contributing. Everybody. And that's it. I think I covered everything that I had this week. So let's go into the Q&A section of the day. How's the chat going? Anyone tried building with Ninja? I think Sergey uses Ninja. Many people use Ninja. So is there a replacement for Arcanist? No, not yet. And the team still don't know what to do. I think Gitia is gonna get a chance first to replace Fabricator, as in a proof of concept. If that works, great. Blender.Today is a website where I'm gonna go to check if there is any. Yeah, there's 11 questions. Okay, so thank you, Daniel. I'm gonna stretch and go through the questions. Okay, first question by Daniel. Hi Pablo, I hope you're doing well and the weather is treating you nice. Weather, I love it. I can drink hot drink beverage and I'm fine. I like the layers, so weather, it's good. I'm writing from the snow-covered hellscape that is Alberta. Mother Nature has forsaken us and refuses to acknowledge what spring is. When spring comes, it will be amazing. On the Blender side of things, I noticed on Blender chat that the live posted this. What did the live post? Disagree. With the pop-up, not with the live. What is this? Hair layers, modifiers enabling, node groups. How is the sculpt defined in this case? Yeah, so mockups on hair. And I noticed that the nodes there kind of look like the old design you had before that didn't make it into Blender around the time of the dot grid background. Maybe I'm wrong. I think they look like that. Or are they maybe still potentially a thing? I really like that design. So what Daniel means is I had a mock-up of how nodes should look. I had this. Oh, I don't have the HTTPS, but anyway. Safe. It's an HTML page. It doesn't have anything. Anyway, I made a mock-up long time ago about the nodes looking like this, and this was a design that I had in mind back in the days. However, when I tried to implement this, when I was working on the new look for the new nodes, so some of it got implemented. Actually, you can see that the line down here got implemented. I added it. The thing is, I didn't went with the line. Where am I here? Here. I didn't went with just the line because it's hard to see when you're far away. Like from this distance, it's great. You see it, fantastic. But when you are actually using it and when you zoom out, it would be lost. So it would be hard to see which node it is. However, I want to give it another pass. Whenever I have free time again, I want to look into being able to fade the entire UI, because at this size, the UI of a node shouldn't even be there. It should just be the full color or an icon or something that represents the node. But the fact that you can click on these tiny drop downs and there is nothing but, I don't know if you get to see it, but there is literally 1 pixel. This is useless. This is useless. Like being able to edit the UI at this site is actually more dangerous than helps. Anyway, this should fade out and it should become a color. So the line could come back. I'm not sure when or how, but yeah. Anyway. The next question. Hello, Pubs, says Slug Nugget. It has always annoyed me that in pose mode, the X-ray button has the same effect as enabling in front for the armature without actually enabling in front in neither object properties or armature properties. There is no way of making meshes transparent like X-ray does in other modes. Although this might be handy for some, I think it's not expected behavior the button should have. What are your thoughts on this? So there's no way of making meshes transparent like in other modes. I think in pose mode, so basically it changes functionality. Maybe it should be just a whole new option altogether, right? Because it changes functionality, trying to be helpful, trying to be like, okay, you're in pose mode, so you may want to see the bones better, the transparency in the bones, not the mesh itself. So that's why this could work. I'm not completely involved into animation enough to decide. However, I think it's important. It's more important to have consistency over anything. So if there is a different type of drawing that could be done to improve the way you look at bones, it should be added but separate from taking over what X-ray does. So X-ray should always do one thing and one thing only, regardless of the mode. So yeah, to keep it in mind, should be a new, what is a new name for the other setting? Bone X-ray, X-bone. Bilker asks, hi Paula, how can I render just one pass? One pass of what? you can just one pass. Well, first you need to go to the settings and enable the pass. You need a combine though, depending on which pass. I don't know if I got it, if I understood, but you just enable the pass and you should get it. If you mean shader passes, just add a shader AUB from here, and then in your shading settings you want to have a new AOB output, and then choose here the same pass that you had, and then you will be rendering one pass. Although I'm not sure if I understood the question completely. Blender Veda asks, hope you're doing great and awesome. I'm doing great, at least. In the UV editing workspace, in the image menu, after opening an image file, the invert and flip menu don't work. Do you know how and where to post such a thing? Wait, in the UV editing, in the image menu, after opening an image, the file invert and flip don't work. Do you know how to post? Well, it's a bug. If it used to work and then in the editing workspace doesn't work, then please report it as a bug. Mr. Kleiner says, hello, it's been long requested feature to make adding custom lookup tables easier and less confusing. Do you happen to have any news about that? It would be awesome to be able to apply lookup tables, LUTs, with compositor or directly during the render. No, actually I have no news regarding that. There was an add-on for that it would add it to the thing here, so you would basically write LUT, but I don't know the status of that, and it still would be an add-on that should be built in Blender though. No, sorry, I don't have any news on that. Hey Pablo, the current default snap is 5 degrees while rotating. Is there a way to change the value? If not, then it's possible to add the ability. Snap is 5 degrees while rotating. Well, if it's the same rotation that you can set from the viewport, or not, wait, from editing, navigation, rotation angle is 15. Is this what you mean? Snap is 5 degrees while rotating. Is there a, or which one? What snap? Because there is a million ways. You mean with the shortcuts? And let's see. So Shift F5. This, the rotating left to right. If it's something with the key map, then maybe you can just look into, is it orbit? And then you has a orbit down, orbit left. But you don't have an option how much to orbit. Roll, there you go. 3.142. So you can specify a specific roll. And what is the unit of this? Degrees, radians. Hey, Decoded just mentioned, I think the add-on is called 3D LUT Importer. So looks like maybe that's the one. Yeah, there you go. Ah, it's from the market. Come on, something so shouldn't be an add-on. I mean, or it shouldn't be paid. Something so basic, right? Anyway, great. Thanks for sharing Decoded. If you don't know Decoded, he makes awesome Blender add-ons in for Blender. Super cool stuff. Next. He means rotating an object. Oh, when rotating an object and snapping. Well, it uses the, like this, with control to snap. But this uses the, no, there you go. No, it's not. So R and rotate holding control, that kind of snapping. I'm not sure if that is, yeah, that's a good question. No, I don't know. I don't think this is customizable. Might be wrong, so please, if you know, let us know. If you know, let us know. Next question by Costas1 says, hi Pablo, I wanted to ask you if there are any plans to make something about the manage of the add-ons. There are too many add-ons. There are too many. If you want, there are too many add-ons. My Blender doesn't have any add-ons. Look at that. Look at that. Nice. I have Node Wrangler, Amaranth, basta. But I know people can run into many add-ons and the end panel is not that comfortable. But it's not related to add-ons. It's just regular Blender. It sucks. This sucks. This is really bad. But apparently it's really hard. So I really hope people... You know, there are people making entire forks around Blender UI, making it better. Why don't you guys fix this, please? And put it in branches, in forks, and in Blender itself. It's probably a lot of monkey work to get this to work, but yeah. That's the issue with not having enough or having few developers trying to do too many things. I would personally give this priority because it's not only for add-ons, it's just in general that this is you can scroll, yes, but yeah, it shouldn't be the case. Like you should use this code. The problem with this is that there is 3 types of tabs. There is this up here, there are tabs, this kind of tabs, and this kind of tabs. So this should be unified. Actually, even worse, because in the theme, it's even worse because you can have the actual tabs, like these kind of tabs, and then these tabs, which are per editor, which makes things so convoluted. But each editor has its own tab colors, which is so unnecessary. Although I understand that for accessibility, it's a good thing to be able to change Blender so much. But by default, you should use the same settings unless you override them, the same settings as the rest of the tabs in Blender. Hey, nice to see that your operating system is free and open source again too. What do you mean? I am at work. I'm at the Blender. The Blender we only use, well, except that there are some Apple computers, of course, because Blender needs to run there. There is at least one Windows computer, I think, because the BuildBot has to build those as well. But most of the computers here are using open source, and we all use mainly open source. I use GIMP, I use Krita, I use Inkscape. I was actually using Inkscape. I have Inkscape open somewhere here. I was testing some stuff. It's not the Splash, I wish, but I was testing some renders that I like just to see how they will look. The next question, no, actually the same question. A fast fix for now would be to make the end panel scrollable. I wouldn't call it fast, otherwise I think developers would have already done it. I don't think this is fast per se, but I would. There are many tasks around this. First, give it a minimum height, minimum size. After that, just add a scroll. You know, like middle mouse button, and just scroll in there and scroll through this. Yeah, it's those 2 things: minimum height and scroll. That would already come a long way. That being said, add-ons in general need. Yeah, the add-on manager needs to be overhauled. Now it's just not so great. This whole UI, not the best. Hey Pablo, can we get an add-on to convert an object to reflection catcher or a new feature, like the same as shadow catcher? But shadow catcher also gets reflections now since Cycles X, right? And also, how would you convert into that? Just an object, just with a setting, right? Or use a glossy pass. Like if you have cycles, this is the worst colors that I could pick. What if you just use like a glossy indirect, and then use Cryptomatte to mask it out? Next question. Hey Pablo, there are some amazing brush settings that were added to the new Vertex Paint patch under the brush settings. Will we see these new settings in the normal texture painting mode anytime soon? Yes, because everything is unified, and I'm so happy to say that. So eventually, painting, texture painting. Well, I mentioned last week that the texture painting system got an update to use the PBVH, similar to what Sculpting and Vertex Paint is using now at the moment. So yeah, great things coming up. Doppelganger says, hey there, Pablo. Hope you had a great start of the week. As somebody who is kind of responsible for the UI in Blender, well, I'm not really responsible. I'm part of the... I just give hints, ideas that I think would improve Blender, and I often try my best to do it myself, and then I ask the rest. But what I do, it's mainly because I spend so much time in the live streams and get in touch with the community that I try to reflect that into the things we do. The proposal is from 1 year ago. It will be very useful for the trackpad and touchscreens users to have a zoom and a pan gizmo to move around the node editor. That's already... no, it's not here, but there is... I actually have... how can I search? I want to search tabs, and it's like gizmo. Add navigation gizmos to the node editor. There you go. So yeah, there is a patch already by Ethan. I gave some feedback that about having the arrows and stuff. Since then, he's been updating and everything. So I should reply and see what the rest of the team says. Yeah, that's the idea. That everywhere else, but there should be a toggle, because in the image editor, in texture painting, there are these buttons, but there's no way to toggle them off, and I hate that. Everything that you can enable, that you can have, it should be possible to not have it. So we need this button, this toggle, also in the image editor, and in geometry nodes and everywhere else. Okay, I think that covers everything. Let's see if there is any more. It's probably going to load the same questions again. Hopefully not. Any plans to make something to manage? Yeah, I think I am really just loading. Hope you're doing great. Just a public service announcement. The latest 3.2 builds won't run on macOS 10.13.6 because of Core Haptics framework isn't available on that OS. 10.13.6 is very old, right? But yeah, High Sierra. But Blender requirements, like, it is old, but if it's not specified in the requirements, you see, Blender requires 10.13, so 0.6 should work. If there's a limitation, if something has changed, then this should be updated. Although these are valid for 3.1, not for 3.2. So eventually, if this has to be updated, it will be mentioned. Thanks for the PSA, by the way. That's it. If your Blender doesn't start on macOS, it's because of that. Okay, time to call it a day. How's the chat going? There is a lot of action going on in the chat. I have how much time? No, I'm actually over time, so I shouldn't even look at this. But hey, tools, nice theme. In the tool, the hotkeys are at the bottom, yes, but it doesn't say. Use Shift Tab for snap toggle and then Shift to snap in 1 degree instead of 5. Also, there is a way. You use pure ref. Oh yes, true. I use pure ref. Well, I mean, there are exceptions, right? Like I use Spotify. That's not open source. I use a bunch of things that are not open source, or things that are kind of open source. Anyway, most of it is open source. Even the thing that I use to toggle the audio cues that I am going to use now in a moment. So, time to call it a day. I hope you learned something new. I hope you are enjoying whatever we tried today. Although some of the features are not even in the build-bot, available in the build-bot. So maybe it's a good chance for you to learn how to compile Blender. Otherwise, wait until tonight, where the build-bot here at the studio updates the builds and you're gonna get the latest and the greatest. Remember, this week we have 3.2 beta. Should be on Thursday. Usually it's on Wednesday, but here on Wednesday there's a holiday. It's the birthday of the king of the Netherlands. So hope they have cake. Otherwise, I will see you again next week around same time, around the same place. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I didn't give you a warning. Sorry, I didn't give you a warning. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Get Blender, download Blender, change Blender, improve Blender. Every week we see more and more developers, so that's pretty exciting. Go, tweak, change it. It's your own 3D software. How corny that sounds, but it's real. It's real. It's yours. Yours. Ciao.